I'm not going to stand at the podium. I have my notes with me, and I'll be putting them up and down a little bit, but I'm not going to stand at the podium. Thanks for the introduction, Mike. It makes me feel old. First ever. Thanks. So today I'm going to talk to you about the science of communication, apparently, because that's what it says on the slide. What is the most popular communication tool that we have today? So I hear some people saying cell phones. I hear some people saying a lot of things. Let's keep it clean, people. This is a family show. Our cell phones are pretty unpopular. Everybody's got a cell phone. I imagine you all have a phone on you. We call them phones, which is a bit of a misnomer because actually that is the least of what they do. I have a daughter. She was born with one of these in her hand. She doesn't know what an Encyclopedia Britannica is. That's a whole other conversation. We all have cell phones. They are smart. They're way smarter than we are. That's a true story. I'm going to put my clicker down. I was at an Apple convention, which was really cool. I move around a lot, and these flags I see somebody moving their head. I'm just going to move around. Don't shift. I'll move again. It'll be fine. I was at an Apple conference, and I learned this really cool trick. I have not done it, admittedly, in a room this large before, but I'm going to do it with you guys right now. So if you have your phone and you would like to participate in this very cool trick that I learned at my Apple convention, admittedly, I am not an iPhone, I'm an Android. I prefer Androids, but it works on all phones. So if you have a phone, pull your phone out, put it in your hand like this. Every phone is a little bit different, so don't be confused by this. When you hold the power button down, you sometimes get a lot of options. You get a power off, you get a restart. My phone also gives me the opportunity to restart or take a screenshot. So if you're doing this with me, hold the button down for power off and wait for it to power off completely. And as you're looking at it, it's not, oh, there it goes. If you're looking at it, and then look to the person when it's powered down completely to your side and say, hello. Hello. Hi. Just so we're not being ambiguous, the most popular tool we have today is our mouths. You are the tool. It's a long way to go to tell a room full of people they're a tool, but I'm in it. And that thing you just did when you said hello, that is interpersonal communication, and more specifically, that is what we are going to talk about today. This is my longest introduction ever. Thank you for being patient. That's beautiful. So one of the things we got to do if we're going to learn to be better at something is figure out where we're not doing it well. And interpersonal communication is a tough space for people right now for a host of reasons. We're going to talk about some of that. I have spent the better part of the last year and a half really researching this very specific niche of interpersonal communication because it's something that I see that is waning and we're getting worse at it. And so as a communications professional, I want to really focus on what's going on, what's working, what's not working. I have developed 3 buckets of things that I feel like we are not doing well in our interpersonal communication space. And I feel like this is fairly global. I'm not married to these 3 buckets, so I'm open to feedback on this later if you disagree. But for the purposes of this conversation, the 3 buckets for mistakes in communications look a little bit like this. Assuming everyone communicates like you. One of the big mistakes we all make is assuming other people are going to communicate the same way that we communicate. So there's about 1 million ways to do any one thing. Communication is no different. If what you're doing is working for you, that's great, and you're probably right. You're probably right. But also, that doesn't make the other people wrong. And I'm sure you're right. I like to tell people they're right. Positive validation. The other thing that we're doing is not being present. This is making our communication so difficult. We sit in rooms, but we're not paying attention. One of the really tough things is we have a lot of information coming at us all the time. Emergency managers specifically have the best built-in excuse for not being present because you could be literally getting an important message at any moment. If the entire room gets up and walks out right now, I'm going to assume that it's that and not me. So, truth. The third bucket that I've come up with is not looking deeper than the words. A lot of times we have an exchange, and I've done this myself, All of these mistakes are mistakes that I have made myself. When you walk away from exchange, have you ever walked away from a communication with somebody and go, what the heck is wrong with that guy? A more human approach to that might be to ask that guy, hey, what's going on with you? You okay? This accomplishes two things. First of all, it tells that guy, I might be communicating a little bit like a jerk. But it also tells that guy, ooh, I need to recalibrate, and also I can trust this person to help me be in a better space. And it builds up some trust muscles, builds up relationships, makes our interpersonal communication stronger. We need to look a little bit beyond the words of these communications. So the goal, of course, is effective communication. What are some of the things that get in the way of effective communications? Ideas? Yell at me. I love that when people yell at me. There you go. Thank you, Diane. Diane and I just had a birthday yesterday. Happy birthday to us. Woo! Anybody? Thank you. Thank you. At 47, it's no longer an applause. Thanks. I appreciate you. Ego gets in the way. Somebody else, an idea. What do you got? Preconceptions. I don't know who you are. I can barely see you, but I love you. Thank you for that. A lot of the things that get in the way, this is too big of a room for me to be shouting out at people, so a lot of the things that get in the way of our interpersonal communications come down to this word right here, judgment. Judgment. We are judgmental people. The world is judgmental. It's literally how we function. Before I came up on stage, you had a very little bit of information about me. Mike said, ooh, Noel's going to come up and talk to us about, actually, I think you got the title of my presentation wrong. I'm just going to put that out there. But Noel's going to come up and talk to us about communication and science. And you had an opinion about what that was going to look like. And then later, I came up on stage. And then you had an opinion about who I was going to be. Now, you had the opinion before I came on stage, and then when I came on stage, you adjusted your opinion for the additional information that you got. You had an idea of what I was going to be when I got on stage, and then I got on stage. It probably didn't look exactly like this. You probably weren't expecting me to be so tall. I get that a lot. I get that. So I want to just kind of play with this for a little bit. I'd like everybody to put down whatever it is that they're doing, and I want you to look at me. It's a little creepy, but it's me, so I don't mind. I want you to think about, right now, what you think of me. You all have an opinion. There's an answer in everybody's brain to that. What do you think of me? Some of it's positive, some of it's negative, some of it's neutral. Statistically, more than half of this room has a snarky comment in their head right now. That's true. The point is that you got some information, you got new information, you judged it, and then you got new information. What if I gave you more information? What if I told you that I used to work at the Office of Emergency Management in New York City? I'm in a room full of emergency managers. Does that buy me any street cred? Snarky comments, thank you. What if I told you that from there I was recruited to work in private sector crisis management, which is where I learned crisis communications, which is where I was recruited to do crisis communications for an international public relations firm for corporate communications and government affairs? And what if I told you that I now work for an international nonprofit responsible for communicating with the German government on behalf of Holocaust survivors globally every day? Now what are you thinking about me? Yep. That was unexpected. I paid part of the people down here. Nice. The point is as I give you more information, you're taking it in, you're forming an opinion, you're asking yourself questions. I wonder about this, I wonder about that. But the interesting thing about the way we think isn't any of that. The interesting thing is I have been telling you things about my career path. You now know things about me professionally. But you are forming an opinion about me personally. I know who you are. That's how we work. This is judgment. And it's actually okay. We're supposed to be making some judgment. We're supposed to be doing this. This is critical. We are receiving so much information at such a rapid pace. It is impossible for us to even know what our brain is processing. Our brain is constantly processing the information that we are receiving, and we don't even know what it's doing. It's happening behind the scenes, and all we get is this tiny little message that our computer kicks out to us, and it says, oh, she's so tall. That's judgment. That's how judgment works. So I'd like to take this opportunity as we discuss what a bunch of judgment people we are to tell you a story about my mother. Felt like the appropriate place to put that in there. She's not here, but I know this is being recorded, so I'll keep it clean. I grew up in a very conservative Christian church-going household. We were raised with some very old school lessons. Chief among them was never judge a book by its cover. This was a big one. I grew up with a lot of old school teachings, but that was a really big one. My mom used to tell us that one a lot. When I was 15 years old, I fell in love with a guy in my social studies class. When I tell you, this guy was like, he was on the track team, and he was so hot, and he had this like flock of seagulls thing going on with his hair. When he asked me out for homecoming, I could not wait to get home and tell my mom I'm going to homecoming with the guy with the hair, and we're gonna get married. I was pumped. I got about 30 seconds into that conversation, and my mother said, you are absolutely not going anywhere with this boy. I heard about him from so-and-so's mom, and I know what he's about, and I've never met him, but I know everything about him, and he lives in the wrong side of the neighborhood, and there's no way you were going to homecoming with that kid. And being the smart aleck I was, I know that shocks you, I looked at my mother, and I said, what happened to not judging a book by its cover? And do you know what my mother said to me? She said, it's not judgment, it's intuition. Intuition. I want to talk in just a second about the difference between judgment and intuition. Judgment is a process. It is ongoing. It is something that you are doing all the time. While you're sitting here right now, it's happening in the white noise of the background of your brain. It is perpetual. It is critical. It is telling you what's safe, what's not safe, what's moving you forward, what's moving you backwards. Judgment. It is all the time. Intuition is something that you do without thinking. Intuition is an automatic response. It's baked in. You already know, based on your experience, based on previous judgments, you intuitively know a thing. Intuitively, like when your kids are in another room. You can't see them, but you know they're doing something stupid. You just know. Like when you're sitting at your desk at the end of the day, and your boss calls, and you know before you answer the phone you're not going home on time. It's the same kind of intuition. Intuition and judgment are both good, and they both play a very critical role in our everyday lives, and they both inform the way we communicate with each other. But they also both have a dark side. Everything has a dark side. And there is a substantial dark side to judgment, and the biggest problem with judgment is, as we judge things, and to be clear, I'm not talking about the way you're judging my sneakers with my pants right now. I'm talking about healthy judgment, what's safe, what's moving us forward. When you judge things and then you put a tiny little shell around that decision, and it becomes very hard to crack that shell. And then you decide, this is the fact. And it's very hard for new information to get into that fact. And we create these little decisions that can't be made again. And this is where judgment kind of trips us up. And judgment is important, and it's going to keep us from getting into trouble, but it's also going to cause us some trouble down the road. So the most important thing about judgment is that we exercise that muscle so that we can continue working to become better communicators. And one of the things that's really getting in the way of our judgment right now is this topic that I would like to talk to you about. Social, there's a slow murmur. Social media. Social media. We have a love-hate relationship with social media. That's okay. Here's something you should know. We're going to play a little game. Before we play this game, and everybody gets to play, you're welcome. Before we play this game, you should know that 1/3 of the world is using a social media platform. 1/3 of the world, not just one country, the world is on some kind of a social media platform. That is amazing. That is amazing. So I want to take a look real quick. I'm going to name some social media platforms. I'm using my notes because I have some statistics here that I want to share with you. I'm going to put them on the screen as well. But I want to go through this because I have the demographics for who uses what platform, and I'd kind of like to see how it plays out in the room, if you don't mind playing with me a little bit. They put me up here. I'm confined to this thing. You have to stand up. So what I'm going to do is, as I list out a social media platform, if it is your go-to platform, statistically, everybody in this room has 2 or 3 social media platforms that they're using on a given day. So if one of your social media platforms is listed, I just want you to stand up, and I want to see if we can make the demographic happen in the room. It might not work out that way. The demographics are from the world, but we are not representative as a cross-section of that world, but we're going to give it a go just the same. So if you use YouTube a couple times a week, if you use YouTube, please stand up. Take a second, just please stand up. Don't be embarrassed. This is the most widely used platform around the world, by the way. If you use YouTube, videos, they got the best stuff on YouTube. Cat videos, like what? That is true. Okay, so take a look around. You see who's standing up? This is a pretty good and diverse age group of folks. You can sit down. That was fun. If you can't stand up, you're welcome to just raise your hand. The point is the same. So statistically, a lot of people are using YouTube. This is the most widely used platform, in part because it does so many different things. But the age group here is wide. From 18 to 49, these are the people that are using YouTube, and it's because there's so many different things that you can do. And who doesn't want to watch a video as opposed to read something? Word. All right, so one more time, let's do it again. If your go-to platform is Facebook, if your go-to platform, or at least one of them, don't be embarrassed. We know. You posted your recipes. We all saw. Stand up. Awesome. So Facebook, by the way, skews a little older. Take a look around the room. Some of the younger people might be standing up because, of course, they're using it. They're trying to do some things, but it's mostly a middle-aged space. It's a middle-aged space. You're welcome. It's mostly a middle-aged space. No. This is the real reason I booked my flight to leave immediately after. This never goes well. That's super funny. All right, we're going to do just a few more of these, and then I'm going to kick through it. But I'm super interested in this next 2, so we are going to do this out. Stand up if you're using Instagram right now. Stand up if you're using Instagram right now. So Instagram is a changing dynamic, in part, I think, because it was just purchased by Facebook, but also because it is a younger audience that started Instagram, and it's now starting to skew to an older audience. Older, not being old, just older. You can sit down. And then this last one, which I'm very interested in, please stand up if you are using Snapchat. I am fascinated by this. I am fascinated by this. Okay, interesting. You know what the thing you can sit down. You know what the thing about Snapchat is for me? It takes me a long time to create a post. Why would I want to create it and then have it disappear? That just feels like a lot of work. All right, I know everybody's curious about Twitter. Who's using Twitter? Who's using Twitter? Get up. This might be the only exercise you get today. Awesome. Right. It's declining. Twitter has seen a major decline, actually, in the last 5 years, which is interesting, and I'll let you run to your own conclusions on that one. The point being is everybody in the world is using some kind of social media. Why do you think we're doing it? You think we're doing it because we want to engage with each other, connect, stay in touch? I love it when my high school friends find me. That's awesome. That guy with the flock of seagulls hair that ended up in prison, woo! Right? Nope. Turns out we just like to talk about ourselves. I know, that probably doesn't surprise anybody in this room. So researchers have been looking at brain scans, and it turns out that we get very active in our brain when we talk about ourselves. Shocker. This does not surprise anybody in the room. But I do want to point out a couple of statistics that actually should give you some pause. So, if you are speaking to somebody and engaging interpersonally, about 30 to 40% of your interpersonal communications are about yourself. Actually, if you think about that in terms of being in a group of 2 or 3 people, that's pretty good. Everybody gets a little fair play. Everybody gets a little me, and that's cool. That changes dramatically when you are talking about social engagement online. Your social media engagement is 80% about you. Now, what's interesting is the region of your brain that is responsible for things like motivation and love and sex is also stimulated by your social media use. And so every time you hit a post, you're stimulating that section of your brain. And it gets better and amplified when you get likes and shares. So every time you get a like and a share, it's like a little mini orgasm going off in your brain. We're all adults here. Our body is literally physiologically rewarding us for sitting alone and talking about ourselves. Sweet. I can't imagine what's going wrong. I'm going to put up a slide right now that's probably going to get me in trouble. I would like to preface this slide with, I am not a doctor. I am not a scientist. I don't pretend to be one. I have been researching interpersonal communications for about 18 months, in depth, in detail, for my own purposes, for my own work. I am not that smart. I am going to explain to you the slide that is sitting in front of you now. I have some numbers and some statistics. I'm not wearing my glasses. But I am going to go through this because I think that this is an important side note, and I want to tread here lightly because I'm going to use some words that are going to trigger some people. Researchers are scanning brains of people using social media for several hours a day. And what they are finding is that those brain scans are dangerously similar to those brain scans being taken from people who regularly use methamphetamines and opiates. Yes, wow. So what does that mean? Does that mean we're all addicts? No. Please don't get me fired. This does not mean that we are all addicts. What it does mean is that our internet use, our social media use, our technology use is changing the way that our brain is wired. It is literally changing the way that we think, and it's changing what we desire as an interaction and what we deem to be social. I want to ask people here, how many of you would consider yourselves a multitasker? Raise your hand if you consider yourselves a multitasker. Okay, I just heard somebody down here say, I suck at it. Okay, I'm going to let you off the hook. We all suck at it. Nobody is good at multitasking. Have you ever interviewed somebody, for those people who are hiring managers and you interview somebody, have you ever interviewed somebody who says in an interview, I'm a great multitasker? I'd throw that resume out. I don't need people who are great multitaskers. I need people who can focus. Here's the thing about multitasking. This is a huge contributor to what we do. If you are using multiple screens during the course of your day, if you are, say, editing a Word document, you have a little chat screen open and you're talking to your bestie on the other side of the country and also maybe checking your social media on your phone and texting your mother and your office phone rings, if you're doing that on a regular basis, if I just described your day, what you are doing is you are training your brain not to weed out interferences. You are literally degrading your personal ability to focus. It is ruining your ability to focus. And it's not just social media. Has anybody ever seen this phrase? No? You still haven't. There it is. Phantom vibration syndrome. This is a thing. Look it up. It is when you think your phone is vibrating, but it isn't. It's a new thing. It actually turns out, more specifically, it's your body gets an itch somewhere, and your brain is translating that itch as a vibration. This is how our brains are reacting to our internet usage, our social media usage, our phones, our technology. If you want to play a really mean trick on people, when you go into your next meeting, put your phone on the table and just push the button every now and then and vibrate it, and watch everybody kind of jump up and down. I'm not saying I did that. I just think it could be fun. So the internet and the social media has really changed the way that we're communicating. I think that goes without saying. I don't need to get into too many weeds on that, except to say this. If we are losing our ability to focus, if we are losing our ability to engage with each other, then we are losing the personal part of our interpersonal communication. And that really sucks. That's the part that makes us human. That's the part that makes us real. And that's the part that separates us from a lot of the new technology that's coming out. And that's a big deal. So how do we change that? How do we change that? How do you walk into a room full of addicts and tell them to change? You don't do it that way, by the way. Let's play a fun game. You've been sitting still too long. Everybody take a second. Empty your hands of all your belongings. You don't have to shake them like that. Jazz fingers, yeah, woo! Take a second. I want you to cross your arms, and I want you to look at the person next to you. They don't have to look at you back. You can be looking at their back. Yeah, staring down. Woo! It's totally ancillary to the conversation, but it's just fun to make people creepy and look at each other. Yeah, stare at each other. Okay, I want you to watch the reaction of the person that you are looking at in an uncreepy way. I want you to watch the reaction when I ask them to do this. Cross your arms the other way. That's fun. That's good. I used to make people stand up to do that because it literally engages people's legs. I'm not sure why. Changing your habits is hard. Things that are baked in, we can't get rid of that stuff. Changing your habits is very, very hard. What are some of the tactics that we typically use to help people change their behaviors, to help people change their behaviors? Anybody have an idea? What are some of the tactics that we would use? Different behaviors? Wow, I got an enthusiastic bit of answers from the back. Hi, thanks for joining us back there, people. Slick. One of the biggest tactics that you see, anybody seen the side of a cigarette carton lately? We got, where are you? Somewhere there's a slide about this. There it is. Fear. This is our favorite go-to tactic, actually. We want to get someone to change a behavior. We like to scare the crap out of them. Woo! You're smoking and it's going to kill you. I want you to be scared. By the way, it is, so FYI. We tell ourselves if we want to lose weight that if I eat that jelly donut, I'm going to be fat forever. Feels like that. It's not true. It doesn't stop me. I eat all the jelly donuts. I love that stuff. But the truth of the matter is these scare tactics, they actually don't work. Fear is not a good tactic. And the reason it's not a good tactic might surprise you, actually. The reason fear doesn't work, statistically, those pictures on the side of cigarette packs, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, good for you, that means you don't smoke. Those pictures on the side of like gross lungs that somebody pulled out of a cadaver because they were smoking and they died of lung cancer, those pictures are not working. Why aren't they working? Denial. Yes, denial. Everybody likes to live in denial. I think that the answer that you're looking for is that we as people don't like to hear bad news. And so what we do is we tell ourselves an alternate narrative. We go into this brain of ours and we're like, that doesn't feel good. I'm going to need to say something better. And so we tell ourselves something better. So a personal story, and this is a true story, and it irks me, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. My daughter, who is 21, has recently started smoking. This bums me out in a way I can't even express to you, but also it fascinates me because why, at this day and age, when she has so much access to information, would she start smoking? I know that she does it for social reasons, and I know that she's doing it when she's around people, because when she's around me, she doesn't do it as much. And so I know that that's the thing. But here's the thing, on the side of every one of her cigarette packages is this terrible, terrible picture. And do you know the narrative that she tells herself? My great-grandmother smoked a pack a day until she was 90-something and died, and she didn't die of lung cancer. This is the narrative that we tell ourselves. We change it because we don't want to feel bad. So we tell ourselves something that makes us feel good. I have a really great experiment that I want to talk to you about this. Again, I preface all of these things with, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, this is not my space, but this is a really interesting research study that I found while I was researching this space, and I wanted to share it with you because I think it illustrates an interesting point. So there were a bunch of college students, and they felt, based on their personal experiences, knowledge of their family background, and medical history, that they had about a 50-50 chance of losing their hearing. So there's this pool of students, and they feel like they have a 50-50 chance. And so researchers set them up with 2 exams. They get to meet with 2 so-called experts. They don't know it's fake. And so they meet with the first expert, and the first expert gives them a fake exam. And after that fake exam, he says, you know what, actually, I don't know, based on this exam I just gave you, I think you're looking pretty good. I think you have only about a 40% chance of losing your hearing in life. Sweet. And then they meet with the second expert, and the second expert looks at them and he says, whew, based on this exam I just gave you, I feel like you're actually skewing more toward the 60%. I think you might actually lose your hearing. They were asked at the end of this study, based on these 2 professional opinions that they got, if they had changed their opinion about how likely they were to lose their hearing. All of them, to a single student, changed their answer to 40%. They took the positive news. They heard the negative news, and they were like, he's probably wrong. Because this other guy, who was clearly smarter, obviously, said this other thing. So they took this research on the road, and they conducted it across a larger bit of age ranges. They looked at ages 10 to 80, and from age 10 to 80, they found some very interesting things. It turns out people don't like bad news. It was a very expensive study. The more interesting thing about their findings was this. People under the age of 30 learn really well from positive news, and people over the age of 50 learn really well from positive news. It's only in this window between the ages of about 35 to late 40s, early 50s, where you can learn from negative news. And that is because it's not intuitive to us. We have to learn it. So over the course of our lives, we learn to take negative inputs and use them as lessons and apply them forward. It's not natural. It's more natural for us to learn from positive news. College students, they'll do anything. That's true. So how do we change? How do we change? Be the change. So I was reading a little bit of Dr. Tali Sharot, and excuse me because it might be Tali, it's T-A-L-I, it's down at the bottom of the screen. If you need any of this information, by the way, I have all of it, please email me, I'm happy to share it all with you. She has 3 principles that she has devised, she feels motivates, pushes our mind and our behaviors, and I want to talk a little bit about those 3 really quickly. Social incentives, number 1, highlighting what everybody else is doing. If 8 out of 10 people are doing a thing, everybody wants to do that thing. Social incentives, keeping up with the Joneses. Immediate rewards. We want to get the reward that makes us feel good right now. Even if the payoff isn't supposed to be until long term, we want to feel it right now. We want tangible proof. We want all of the rewards that are due to us immediately. And also, we want to know that we're doing it well. We want to be shown how great we've gone. Even if we've only gone 10%, we want to see that 10%. We don't want you telling us that 90% of it isn't happening. We want to know that 10% of it is done. That's what we want. We want positive feedback. So this is a lot of information and a lot of research and a lot of stuff. How does it apply to interpersonal communication? Well, if you look at Dr. Sharot's principles, you'll find that a lot of this stuff is kind of stacked against us. in the face of social media, in the face of our current communication stats. The social media incentives that drive our behavior right now, they don't actually support interpersonal communications. What are 8 out of 10 people doing? They're posting on Instagram. They're in the Bahamas. They're doing cool things. They're so cool. You want to be cool too? That's what they're doing. The one-on-one interactions that we're looking for, the personal engagements that we're hoping for, it's losing out on a popularity contest, right? It's losing out to likes and shares and comments. And how are we monitoring ourselves currently? How are we monitoring our progress? 1 like, 1 follow, 1 share. This is how we've begun to value ourselves. I've got this many followers. I'm so cool. It's not enough to just be tall anymore, people. So, it's kind of hard to talk about it and not address the fact that it's not done by accident. Social media platforms have been developed by people who know these 3 principles. They're not new, they're not novel. They build these platforms with that in mind, and guess what? There's nothing sinister to it. It's literally their job. It is their job to make these social platforms work like that. And they've given us a lot of gifts, and they've given us a lot of great communication tools that we never had before and couldn't have even fathomed 15 years ago. We are doing some great stuff. But in the same way, it is not Johnny Walker's job to make sure I get up out of the hotel bar and back to my room. It is Johnny Walker's job to make good bourbon. It is my job to manage myself. So I'm not waiting around for Mark Zuckerberg and Congress to tell me what is the appropriate way to engage me online. And I'm certainly not waiting around for research scientists to come back to me and say, hey, sitting in a room by yourself, talking to yourself online is no substitute for human engagement. Duh. I don't need a research for that. What I do want to do is I just want to manage myself. As technology is advancing, the human component that makes it real, the thing that gives it meaning is us. It is whatever we put into it. It's whatever we make of it. And only we can monitor that. A lot of parents right now are doing this incredible thing. They're limiting the number of hours that their children have screen time. This is a new terminology that we use, by the way, in the year 2019. Screen time. They're limiting their screen time. I think this is great. And the wonderful thing about being a kid is you also get to go to school, and you get to have engagements with your teacher and your friends, and then you get to have play dates, and you get all this engagement, and you're having all this fun, and you're doing all of these very cool things that are informing you as a human being. Can you imagine what your life would look like if you balanced the screen time you spend on an average day with a few play dates? What would your day look like? I live for that calendar. We're not balancing it out ourselves. I love it when parents do it for their kids. Save yourselves, it's too late for me. We need to do it for ourselves as well. There's a lot of ways to communicate, and interpersonal communication is just one of them, but we have to practice them. Artificial intelligence, familiar? Heard this term? AV, VR, virtual realities, augmented realities, artificial intelligence. We have to practice the things that make us human, because the next level of what we're doing right now is going to require that we become more human. And the next level, the future that we're facing, is here. Anything you've seen that blows your mind in terms of AI and AR, all of these things, this is just the tip. This is the very beginning. It's all uphill from here. And we have to practice the things that make us human. When you guys are coming to these conferences and you're working on your professional development and you're looking at your skills and you're thinking to yourself about what it is that you should be changing and what tools you should be developing, you need to remember that the most important tool in your toolbox is you. You are the tool. It's a long way to go to call a room full of people a tool, I realize. I'm raising a bit of a caution flag here today. I hope that you guys have enjoyed what I've had to talk about. I'm very excited and grateful for Mike Gavin and IAEM for bringing me in here today, and a huge nod to Julie Husk, who tolerates me on a regular basis. Thank you very much.